Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just touched on a number of different games in the top 25 that are going to be very, very important, including a very fun one against Washington State and Boise State at the end of the night on Saturday. So be on the lookout for all of those. Cannot wait for those one to unfold. But let's get into some hot takes. Let's get into some hot takes about this upcoming weekend. And the first one might not be all that hot, but I do think it's important. I think Carson Beck plants his flag this weekend. I think there's been a number of different moments for Carson Beck throughout his career. I think he remembers that last one in Atlanta against Alabama. I think that one eats him up just a little bit inside. It's his only loss as a starter at UGA, so I would imagine it would. But the reality is, I think he has all the energy he needs from a mental perspective going into this game. I also think he's an elite player. I've made no bones about it. I think he's the best quarterback in the country. I think he proves it on Saturday. I think there's a number of different things that are going to be thrown at him that are not going to be easy by any means. I think he's going to eat them up. I know there's a lot of talk around other people right now. You know, after that Kentucky game, we weren't necessarily talking about Carson Beck too much. It was all about Quinn Ewers. It was all about Cam Ward. It was all about these other people, you know, taking the Heisman or going to a national title or being that number one pick at the end of the day. I think Carson Beck proves everyone wrong. I think he shows that everyone that he is the best player in the country. Or not the best player, that's Travis Hunter. The best quarterback in the country. He is the one that's going to win a national title this year. He is a Heisman frontrunner, and he is the guy that's going to be picked number one overall over there in April. So it doesn't mean he's going to go for 300 yards, 4 scores. Doesn't mean he's going to do anything absolutely insane in this game from a stat perspective. I just think when you watch this game, you're going to see a guy in full control of what he's doing, in full control of this offense, and executing it at a ridiculously high level, even with a great defense on the other side. So I think Carson Beck proves a point on Saturday. I think he shows to everyone that that game over there in Atlanta last year was the anomaly. It wasn't who he is. It wasn't who this Georgia team is going to be going forward. So I'm putting a little bit of hope in that guy. You know, I still think he's the best quarterback in the country, and I'll lean with that. If he gets dominated this weekend, maybe I'll change my tune a little bit, but I'm going to roll with him for the time being. I think Carson Beck makes a big-time point this upcoming weekend. And then I think Illinois does the exact same. I think they prove a point even in a loss. I do have them losing by 10 points to Penn State. I think they're going to be able to be really tough this weekend. And frankly, they were already put in a really tough spot. They're going away from home in a whiteout atmosphere, quote-unquote, against a Penn State team that kind of felt their own mortality against Bowling Green. I think they know what they do poorly. I think they know what they do well. And I think they're going to be laser focused for this game with Illinois coming off a huge win, which obviously helps this as well. So I think you're not going to fly under the radar, I guess is the best way to put it, if you're Illinois. What you're going to be able to do is just match punches for a little bit. I think they're going to play really, really good football, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think they're going to be able to find Pat Bryant and Zachariah Franklin over the middle of the field, and I think they're going to be able to take advantage of this back end just a little bit for Penn State. So I don't necessarily think Illinois is going to run away with this game by any means. I don't think Illinois is even going to win this game. What I do think is Illinois is going to walk in and not be afraid. I think they're not going to flinch. I think they're going to play their football, and I think they're going to play really good football for the majority of this game. Penn State's just going to make those couple of plays down the stretch on the defensive and offensive side of the ball. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this one fold. I just think if you're Illinois, do what you've done the first part of the season. You know, avoid mistakes, play clean, do a lot of really great things, stay in front of the chains, chew clock, do all of those things that you've been doing the first 3 weeks. And you'll have every ability to be in this game, first 4 weeks, and you'll have every ability to be in this game. So it'll be really interesting to watch this one unfold. But I think Illinois falls in this one, but I think they prove a point to just about everyone else in the country that they are not a joke. They are not an anomaly that was just able to beat a interesting Nebraska team and now is going to fall off a cliff. They're going to be here to stay, and whenever you face up against them, which Michigan is going to have to do in a couple of weeks, you're going to have to be on your A game because they're going to make you be on your A game. And then you got a Notre Dame team. I think they're going to fall out of the CFP race this upcoming weekend. Frankly, I've been very clear about this. I think they should already be out of the CFP race. I think losing to Northern Illinois at home should disqualify you. But that's none of my business. I understand how the 12-team playoff works, so we'll see what happens. But they do play Louisville this upcoming weekend. I just think it's a bad matchup more than anything else. And I don't necessarily think Notre Dame can't stop them offensively or anything like that. I just think when you're talking about Notre Dame, scoring points is like pulling teeth for that team. There is not a lot of things that they're going to be able to do, especially against a ridiculous defensive line for Louisville. If they're going to try to just straight up run the ball, it's going to be a nightmare for Notre Dame. They went up against a really potent rushing attack against Georgia Tech last week. They gave up 2.6 yards per carry. I think Notre Dame's going to be a little bit better than that, but they still have questions on that offensive line. They're still a very young unit, and we'll see how they can handle this defensive line, but I don't like Notre Dame in this game even a little bit. I'll be totally honest with you. So that Northern Illinois loss obviously put them on thin ice. I think it should have really just had him splash on through, but this week I think is going to be the pickaxe to that ice. I think they're going to fall through. I think the CFP race will be done in South Bend, and they'll be looking up in week 6 and asking a lot of questions about how this all went down. So there's going to be a number of questions to be answered up there in South Bend at the end of the week, and I think it'll come because Louisville is going to get that big time win. And then you got Ole Miss. I think they're going to be a dogfight in the third quarter. I gave my pick with that one. I have them winning by 13, but I do think they're going to be tested. It's kind of like the same principle I was talking about a couple of weeks ago when we got into the Missouri-Boston College game. This is a team that just hasn't been tested yet. It's not to say that they can't handle that test. It's just to say, what if Kentucky throws the first punch? What if Kentucky gets a big touchdown to Barry and Brown? What if they get a pick 6 early on in this game and everyone at Ole Miss kind of sitting there being like, this isn't how games are supposed to go. We're supposed to score at will and we're supposed to win by 60. That's the way that it's been going for the first couple of weeks. If Kentucky can possibly just throw that first punch, maybe things get a little bit more interesting. So it's one of those things that I don't know how great Kentucky is. I don't know if they're going to be a dominating team on defense the entire year. I definitely don't think they're going to be competing in the SEC down the road. What I do think they can do is stifle an offense. I think they can slow down a team just enough to make it deep into the third quarter, and you're looking up and Kentucky's down 3. At 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, Kentucky's only down 3 points, and then you look up 5 minutes later, and they're down 17. So it could happen in a hurry, don't get me wrong, but I do think there would be a little bit of worry at that Ole Miss, in that Ole Miss locker room at halftime on Saturday. So going to be a really fun game there. Cannot wait to see what Kentucky can do, but I do think Ole Miss wins. I just think it's a little bit contentious in the first couple of quarters. And then we got a couple of big-time Mountain West matchups. We talked about the Matthew Sluka situation. We're moving on from that. I understand we can talk about that all we want, but they have a really good quarterback behind him in Malik Williams. He is going to be more than fine. This is still a huge game in this season and still might decide who ends up going to be that group of 5 team. And UNLV really needs this one. Mikey Keene was having an incredible season for Fresno State last year, missed the last 3 games, and they missed out on the Mountain West Championship. He knows how much this one means. They were able to beat UNLV last year, but he knows that this one is as important as every other one on the schedule, and he knows he's going to want to stay on that field. He's going to want to capture every single moment he possibly can, and he believes that they should have been in the championship last year, and I can't necessarily argue with them. If Mikey Keene was on that field for the last 3 games, then they probably would have been. So it'll be really interesting to watch this one unfold. Malik Williams is going to be appointment television. I can almost promise you guys that. He's going to be so much fun to watch. That offense is still going to be as explosive as ever. I cannot wait for this one to unfold, and frankly, I think it's just going to be downright incredible to watch this one, regardless of who's at quarterback for UNLV. And then you got another one, and this isn't necessarily a Mountain West matchup, although it should be. That's a different conversation for another day. Washington State against Boise State. We broke this one down earlier. I do have Boise State winning it. This one's huge. When you talk about the college football playoff in the group of 5, and obviously Washington State doesn't factor into it quite as much, but could be an at-large bid at the end of the day. Boise State, with a loss already, they very much need this game. If they're able to win this game, then they're looking forward saying, okay, the Mountain West is what we own for the last little bit, and we'll be able to do it this year and move on to the playoff. That's what their mindset is going to be. If you're Washington State, this is the toughest team on your schedule. Pretty much across the board. I think you could include Washington, although if Boise State and Washington played on a neutral field, I think you'd have a very interesting game there. But regardless, this is the toughest team, at least the rest of the way, on your schedule. If you can beat them, you can beat absolutely anyone on your schedule, and then you'll prove a big-time point. Every time that you walk into another stadium with a Mountain West team, they'll be a little bit nervous because they know you beat the big dogs. They know you beat Boise State, and especially if you're able to beat them by a ton, not necessarily saying they have to by any means, but it'll be an interesting game and one of those that I think could totally shake up this conference. And a lot of conferences will be shaken up this weekend. The Mountain West might just be more than any other. So it's going to be really fun to watch those 2 matchups. They are late-night matchups, so we'll have to get a little bit used to that. But it's going to be so much fun to see those unfold. And whoever comes out on the winning side might just set themselves up for a berth in that Mountain West title. And then you got a really fun one down in Baton Rouge. Cannot wait for this game. And although it is South Alabama, although the line is quite a bit high, is very, very high in this game, it's going to be a lot of points, guys. We're going to see so many points in this game. I'm predicting a combined 75 points. I thought going up to 80. I'm a little bit worried about that. But I do think we'll get at least 75 points in this game. South Alabama averaging 35.3 points per game. LSU averaging 30. These are two elite offenses. No two ways about that. Neither defense is quite where they want to be. I think South Alabama played great football against App State last week. I also think App State kind of handed them a little bit on the offensive side of the ball, especially with some of the things they were trying to push down the stretch to get back in that game. So I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. I think South Alabama is going to come out swinging. I think Gio Lopez is going to cause problems for that LSU defense, especially without someone like Harold Perkins in that linebacker room. And then on the other side, I think Garrett Nussmeier is just awesome. I think he's going to tear people to pieces this year, and I think this will be absolutely no different. He'll find Mason Taylor. He'll find all of these athletic wide receivers, and LSU might just take up 55 of the 75 points that I'm talking about, but at the end of the day, I do think we'll get plenty of points in this game. I think LSU will be able to likely win this game, but the over-under is at 65.5, and I absolutely love it. I know that sounds crazy with a number at 65.5, but I do think we're going to get tons of points that weekend. Probably will be one of my best bets tomorrow, but be on the lookout for that. It's going to be so much fun to watch this game, and I think we're going to get tons of points in Baton Rouge on Saturday. Cannot wait for that matchup, and maybe South Alabama can shock the world and make a very, very interesting Saturday for all of us. But it's going to be awesome to watch this week unfold. I know there's a lot of talk around NIL and a lot of talk around the transfer portal and all of this different stuff. There's football on. There's football to be played on Saturday. There's a very, very, very good game to be played on Saturday in Georgia, Alabama. I do have Georgia winning. If you missed that, go check out that full breakdown. But at the end of the day, it's going to be incredible. Enjoy the football. Leave all of that stuff by the wayside. Leave all of the crazy stuff that's going on with the sport and all of the negatives that are going on with the sport right now. Put it aside and enjoy these games this Saturday. We will be back tomorrow to talk about all the stuff you guys need to know and get you ready for that finally on Saturday. But thank you once again for listening to the GSMC College Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for all of the content and updates you could possibly want. I promise you there's plenty of time to talk about NIL and the transfer portal and all of that craziness a little bit later. Right now, we're going to talk about football, and we will be right back to do that tomorrow. So I will see you then.